all I need to do. But I think good muscular exercise is very important.
Yes, resistance training is very important as well.
And I think even with the aerobic exercise, what I've been reading more recently suggests that just doing lots of kind of slow jogging is not the best thing to do. You probably get better results from high-intensity interval training, where after a warm-up you'll essentially pretty much sprint, go 90 to 100% of capacity for, say, a minute and a half, then slow down to walk for 2 minutes, then another sprint, then slow down, and repeat that cycle 5, 6, 7 times. That actually gives you a much better metabolic boost, which burns off fat, and improves your cardiovascular fitness as well.
I see.
It takes less time in total, and it's actually more entertaining.
Someone asked also in the viewer asked also, how do you keep yourself emotionally and mentally healthy? I mean, obviously exercise plays a part in that. Exercise and proper diet will keep you mentally sharp and emotionally balanced. Typically, that's for the typical person. But do you do anything else that helps you stay sharp mentally?
Well, gosh, that's kind of something pretty much impossible to answer sensibly in a couple of minutes, I think. But the usual range of things, I haven't always been entirely successful at these. I think all of it depends on your own biochemistry. Some people seem to just naturally be happy and bouncy and very resilient all the time, and others have a much more difficult time. And I don't think it's necessarily any difference in practices. There's a difference in biochemistry that you've inherited. Until we can do gene therapy, I think most actual drugs you take these days are not really very effective in many people. They work for some people. I think we need to actually understand the brain better and be able to do gene therapy to make endemic changes in the brain chemistry to bring you into better balance. That will be the ultimate solution. But obviously, all the usual things that people suggest. Exercise itself is very good for improving mood, for thinking, keeping your brain clear.
Okay.
Not drinking too much, not doing too many different drugs that are too bad for you all at once. I'm not totally anti-drug. Meditation, I think, is a very good practice that I have to confess I don't do as often as I should. I find that when I do it, I'm always just amazed by how it can radically change my mood. Maybe before I meditate, I'm grumpy and annoyed and ticked off about something. But when I meditate, even for 10 minutes, just deep breathing, focusing on muscles relaxing, clearing my mind. But it makes an enormous difference, reduces stress greatly. So
meditation is
doesn't cost
something.
anything.
Okay. And then another question here that a viewer, Jeff, has asked about the proactionary principle and other principles of extropy. Okay, he asked, will it require a new mythology for people in general to adopt the proactionary principle and other principles of extropy? And I think he's going for most movements in the past, most successful movements in human society have been based with they've started with some sort of mythology, and that's what's made them successful. I don't want to, take Jeff's words out of context, but that's what he seems to be asking. Will it require a new mythology for people in general to adopt the proactionary principle and other principles of extropy? Can you address that?
Okay, well, I'd have to distinguish the two parts of that, really. The proactionary principle, the answer is no. that was quite easy.
Okay, no.
For the principles of extropy, because they're very generally about what life means in general, and how to live your life, that's a more difficult one to answer. In general, I'm very wary of mythology. I think mythology can be fine as long as you're very self-aware of mythology. It doesn't have to defeat the point. I think as long as you're aware of symbols being symbols, they can be very powerful. That they essentially are ways of putting a vision into practice. A vision is not, a vision is not a strategy. It's not a business plan. A vision is a very general picture of where you want to go, and is a great mental shortcut. And I think a self-aware mythology can be very useful in that respect. But I think it also can be a big trap as well, because it is a mythology. It's based on myth. It's based on things that aren't actually true, and that's fine because stories aren't true. But that doesn't mean they're bad, as long as you don't get too sucked into them. But rather than mythology, I would rather talk about, again, vision. I think if you have a new vision and some new symbols that try to steer away from any kind of real mythology, that could be very useful. For instance, in the area of life extension, I think we certainly need new ceremonies, and those certainly involve symbols. We need new ceremonies for people who die permanently, for those who are going into cryonic suspension, where it's not really appropriate to do a funeral in the sense of saying goodbye permanently, but you do need some kind of ceremony to help people deal with their emotions, because there's going to be a separation for a long period of time. Traditional ceremonies and the traditional symbols of heaven and hell and so on just not appropriate in my view for that.
They wouldn't be, no.
So in that sense, yes, we do need new symbols, new vision, and in a very kind of cautious sense, new myths. But
yeah, you wouldn't say, but yeah, you want to be very cautious with using the term mythology in the fact that I mean, we're talking about rational future things. We're trying to stay based in rationality here and not mythology, is what you're saying. And having a vision for the future is a lot different than having a myth or developing a mythology for the future, correct?
Yeah, I think it's important to distinguish myths which are kind of fact neutral, if you like. They don't conflict with any facts, from myths which do conflict with facts. For instance, the Scientologists apparently believe in some kind of space god called Xenu, who came and dropped nuclear bombs in volcanoes a long time ago.
Correct. Yeah.
That myth is, in my view, is clearly counterfactual. And so it's a very bad one. It's going to cause people to distort their thought processes, to blind themselves to facts which might conflict with it. And that to me is the real danger with a myth that you take as fact, because you have to distort everything else you believe to make it fit. But if you really see a myth as a story, as a useful symbol, for instance, for me, Prometheus is a myth. Prometheus is a myth I think is a very suitable one, because I don't have any reason to believe Prometheus is a real person, but the message that's being conveyed by that story, I think, is a very good one. Actually, here's a modern myth, and if anybody has not yet seen the movie Iron Man, go see it. It's a great movie, the best superhero movie yet made. And that is a myth that's been in the making for some 40 years or so, since Marvel created the character in the 60s.
Sure.
And I think it's a great myth. It's a myth of a self-made man who uses his own intelligence, his own resources, to build this amazing kind of post-human suit of armor that allows him to do these incredible things. And he's not someone who gets bitten by a radioactive piece of iron. He actually uses his brain to create this stuff.
Sure.
I think that's actually a pretty healthy myth.
It helps us visualize the future, I would say.
Yeah,
that's a myth.
Kind of concrete way of doing that.
Yeah. Okay.
The pure abstractions are very hard to hold on to. So I think the question was probably motivated by that idea that purely abstract, long descriptions of how the future can be are not necessarily very motivating. They're not even very good at guiding us. They may be essential, but we need some kind of some symbols, some myth in that sense. In that sense, I do agree for principles of extropy. Not so much for the proactionary principle, which is much more kind of technical. It actually breaks down into 10 specific principles about how to think better about technologies. I don't really see much of a need for myths there.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And I did promise Dr. Moore that we wouldn't be going longer than an hour in the interview here tonight, so it is getting close to the end. I see that one viewer did ask a rather open-ended question about what is life and how will it change as we become transhumans or post-humans. And I think that question's a little bit too open-ended for just to fit it in maybe a minute or two here. The viewer's asking, if immortality is to extend life, then what is being extended? I don't know if even biologists or philosophers have a real good handle on, a real concise definition of what life is. Any little short comment for that on that matter?
Well, the only really short definition of life I have to hand is life is a process of self-sustaining and self-generating action.
Okay. Let's say that's. Say that slowly once again.
That's from the much despised philosopher Ayn Rand. He said, life is a process of self-sustaining and self-generated action.
Self-sustaining and self-generating action.
Yeah, it doesn't say a whole lot, but it's not bad as a one-sentence definition.
Yeah, that is not too bad at all.
I think the basic what the question is probably based on is I've done a lot of my PhD work. In fact, was based on the idea of what is it that makes you the same individual over long periods of time. So can we say that you've survived into the far future if your personality has changed and your body has changed? You've had various kinds of upgrades and implants. So there's actually a very deep question there, which I say, well, I answer that question in great detail on my dissertation, which is on my website at maxmore.com.
Yes.
So that's going to be a short answer to a very long question.
Right, yeah, and in fact, there is a lot of good information on your website. I just want to remind the viewers that you can always go to maxmore.com to find out more about Extropy, the proactionary principle, and perhaps what is life. You find a good answer to that question. A lot of good information there on maxmore.com. One thing I want to ask just before we go here is there any possibility that I'll be seeing you at the Convergence Conference this fall in November in the Bay Area?
Actually, I don't think I know about that. I'll have to check with that.
Oh, okay. Well,
so this is possible.
Yeah, it's coming up. It's a joint conference, in case you haven't heard, between WTA, Foresight, The Immortality Institute